This video is going to talk about the skills necessary to get a 3 on this graph and trig topic. So not only are you going to be asked to sketch graphs like we're going to be doing today, but it's going to ask you some comparative statements, like which one has a bigger amplitude, or if we're sitting at a midline of 1 and you add 5, what's the new midline? Like 6. Okay, so it's going to ask some questions like that, but the gist of it is being able to graph these functions. So we have y equals sine of x, and that's multiplied by 2. So y equals 2 sine of x. We know sine starts at 0, so we're going to start right in the middle. Ooh, yeah. I forgot that if I press it down too long, it all disappears, so I'll try not to do that. It starts at 0, and we know that it starts at 0 because we're not adding anything on at the end, so our midline is not shifting. However, the 2 out front means we have an amplitude of 2. So instead of just going up 1, we're going up 2. So, and also the x value, our frequency is 1. So we are going to get all the way to 360 degrees just going through one cycle. So generally speaking, we know sine goes up and comes down and goes back up. But let's be more specific. I know it goes up and comes down, so it's going to come back down through 180. So we know that it's going to go up to 1. At 90 degrees, sine is 1. So it's going to go up, come down, and then at 270, I'm thinking on the unit circle, at 270 degrees, down here is -1, our y value. So that is our sine function. You don't have to go backwards. We're really only worried about this positive couple of quadrants there. So let's just stick to those for today. Now we have cosine functions, so that starts up at 1. Up here. You know what? Let's count by... No, we better not. Count by ones. But, we had an amplitude of 3. So instead of starting at 1, we actually need to start up at 3. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to go from 3 all the way to -3. So if I think about a unit circle, cosine over here is 1. When is it -1? At 180 degrees, also known as pi. That's when it's at -1, or in our case, -1, 2, 3. 2 pi, we're going to be back up to where we started. We can kind of connect the dots from there. If you know more information, go ahead and fill it in. Like at 90 degrees, we know it's 0. Down here, it's also 0. So we can kind of fill in that information. Though, I guess if you want to see the rest of it, just rewind. It's a lot faster than me rewriting it all. So we're starting up here at 1, and we're going to go through that. We're going to bottom out at pi, and we're going to come back up. Again, we don't need to worry about continuing that pattern. If you wanted to, we're going to go through 0, -0, and we would technically do that. But don't worry about that side. That's okay. Just showing this cycle between 0 and 2 pi would be most important. Next one. Okay, sine, so we're going to start in the middle, but looks like we have a midline shift of -2. So everything on our graph is going to go down 2. Down 2. The 3 tells us our amplitude is 3, and I guess we don't have any change in frequency yet, so x hasn't been multiplied by anything yet. So by 2 pi, we've still just made one full cycle. Okay, so sine again, we just did this last time. It goes up, it comes down, and comes back up. So somewhere in here, I'm going to have to go through that 0 again, and it's halfway through. We've done this a couple of times. Sine goes up, comes back down halfway through, so it's always at pi that we are back at 0. And our amplitude is 3, so I'm not going to go up 1, I'm going to go up 2, 3. And I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3. I'm off the graph. That's okay. So we're up there, we're down here, and we're going to follow that same pattern. I'm going to go up, down, up. And I know this is sine because I'm starting in the middle of the graph, kind of where the midline is. The midline of the graph is right in the middle of it, and that's where sine starts. Even though we did shift down 2, we're still starting where the midline is. I need to change my pen color. Next one, cosine. So we are going to start up at the top at 1, but Again, we have a vertical shift of +3 for our midline. So we'll go up 1, 2, 3, and we're actually going to start up here instead at 3. Because our midline would be at 0, but instead it's at, time out. Our midline would be at 0, but it's not. It's 1, 2, 3 is our midline, so we need to start at 4. Here's how I figured that out. Cosine starts at 1, but we had this vertical shift of 3. So we're going to start at 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And follow the same pattern. Again, we don't have a frequency change, so by 2 pi we're going to be back to where we started. Cosine, by pi it bottoms out, and it looks to me like we don't have any sort of amplitude change, so we're just going to go down. So this would kind of like be our 0, and we're going to go down to our -1 by pi. Just to clarify a little bit for you. If this is +1, at 90 we're at our 0, and then we're down, and then we have our 0. So don't forget about that midline line. If we have an amplitude of 1, it has to go up 1, and then down 1, and up 1. So it's got to be 1 on both sides of that midline. Last two, I think. Last two. So go ahead and try one of these on your own. Actually, hopefully you tried one of each on your own there. Kept doing a sine and a sine and a cosine. Okay. We have sine, so we start in the middle. We have an amplitude of 4, so we'll still start in the middle because we didn't add anything. Start in the middle, we'll go up to 4, and a 2. We have a frequency of 2, which means by 360 degrees, we'll have gone through an entire cycle. So again, just kind of approximating, I'm going to go up and down and up, and then I'm going to do that entire thing again before that 360 degree mark. Okay, so let's get rid of that, and let's kind of draw in some approximations, some better ones. I'll keep it red. Amplitude is 4, so if we have to go up and down and up, we have to go down again. So 1, 2, 3, 4 is my amplitude, and then I'm back at 0, and then I messed it up again, hang on. Okay, so connecting those dots, starting at the origin, I'm going to have an amplitude of 4, and go down 4, and there's one cycle. Now I'm going to complete that same pattern again, so I'm going to go up, 2, 3, 4, I don't know why that was so big. Second cycle following that same one, have an amplitude of 4, I go down, amplitude of 4, and that ends my cycle. So as you can see, the period here was 180 degrees because we went through 2 cycles. So the frequency is 2, which means we have a period of 180 degrees, or you could call that pi, technically. So there's no reason for the 2 colors there, it just shows you each cycle individually. Last one. So I'm noticing that we have cosine, so we know we start at 1, but we have a midline shift of 1, so we're really going to start at 2. No amplitude, so we're really only going up and down 1 from there, but we are going to cycle through this 4 times by the time we get to 360. So there's our 360. If we hit up 4 times in that bit, 1, 2, 3, 4, that means we're going through an entire cycle every 90 degrees. So let's look at what that would be. If our midline is halfway through that, I need to go all the way down and back up by then. Alright, let's see if this one works this time. We are up at the top and we are going to cycle through in 90 degrees. Cycle through in 90 degrees, cycle through in 90 degrees, cycle through in 90 degrees, and we would be done. This purple line here represents the midline. Again, we had a midline of 1, so we're up there at 1. Cosine starts at 1, so that's why we started up there at 2. 1, 2. And then we went through 4 cycles. So starting there, we had 1, 2, 3, 4 cycles in 360 degrees. So the frequency was 4. Our period then was 90 degrees because we had to go through each cycle in 90 degrees.